It could have been avoided. And she didn't have to die.
Hurricane Beryl didn't kill 64-year-old Pamela Jarrett. CenterPoint Energy's power outage did. Pamela was disabled, passed away in her sleep, sweltering with no air conditioning. It was July 13th, 3 days after the Category 1 hurricane had already come and gone.
Jarrett says her sister was on a CenterPoint emergency list, but her power wasn't restored until Tuesday the 16th.
At least 15 other Beryl deaths have been blamed squarely on the loss of power. 2 of the dead were without power for 8 long days.
You know, all loss of life is terribly tragic. All loss of life is terribly tragic. My heart goes out to those families.
We've all heard it. CenterPoint CEO Jason Wells apologizing. First, because of power issues after the tornadoes of the derecho in May, then after the hurricane.
I know I personally let our customers down, and for that I'm deeply apologetic. For
weeks, Wells had refused to talk to us, and his exclusive interview with Channel 2 the other day,
ready to roll?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Was what we in the business call damage control.
These allegations from the city of Houston and 40 other communities that CenterPoint Energy has been overcharging customers to the tune of about $100 million a year.
Just days before the public was set to crucify CenterPoint at a public hearing here in Houston. It was staged crisis communications, Wells even donning a safety vest as though he was standing next to a power line. He was standing in the middle of a field. But there was something he said that day that's coming back to bite him.
I don't think that we're overcharging our customers $100 million.
This is the CEO and the former CFO of CenterPoint. You don't know? That's an answer from a low-level management person, not the CEO of CenterPoint.
The Lieutenant Governor of Texas had heard enough.
The board of CenterPoint should ask for Jason Wells' resignation, or I believe he should submit it.
The Lieutenant Governor is kind of late to the growing chorus calling on Wells to step down. Some of the city's most famous had demanded that months ago.
These are my people coming in here crying because they're hot and they're miserable and they're dying.
Patrick, though, was sending a public message to CenterPoint's 11-member board of directors, whose silence since the disastrous storm has been unacceptable. CenterPoint has told the Securities and Exchange Commission that their top 8 paid board members earn an average of $344,000 in cash, stock, and other compensation every single year just for going to a couple of meetings, I guess. Attorneys like Wendy Montoya or Rick Ravens from Allstate. He's on the U of H Board of Regents. Raquel Lewis, the spokesman for the Texas Department of Transportation. You pay her salary. You'd figure she had seen a microphone or 2 before.
So as a CenterPoint board member, why is Jason Wells still working?
I'm not here to talk about CenterPoint. I'm here in my capacity working for Texas Department of Transportation. If
you have any interest, my microphone.
You don't have to be talking to me. If you have any interest in speaking to me.
At least the chairman of the board didn't try to grab our mic.
What do you want to say to those who lost loved ones because of the power outage?
Very extremely sorry.
You're concerned? What about Jason Wells?
Very, very sorry. Very, very sorry. He's very sorry too.
He's sorry? But why is he still working for you?
Published reports claim CenterPoint CEO Jason Wells makes more than $7 million a year.
I think if I resign today, we lose momentum on the things that are going to have the best possible impact for the greater Houston region.
So how much profit did CenterPoint make last year?
Just under $1 billion.
Wells was hired 4 years ago as CenterPoint's chief financial officer. Before that, he had spent 13 years at Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E. They'll be forever remembered for putting profit over people's safety. Found criminally liable for the Camp Fire, the largest wildfire in California history. 3 months before Wells escaped to CenterPoint, PG&E pled guilty to 84 counts of involuntary manslaughter.
We remain deeply, deeply sorry
Deeply apologetic.
for this event and the tragic consequences.
It sounds eerily familiar, doesn't it?
Very extremely sorry.
These people that have paid the ultimate price with their life because of the decisions that the company made.
Wells faced the ire of state lawmakers in the weeks following the storm.
Y'all got caught with your britches down on this.
Beryl was no Hurricane Milton or Helene, just a Category 1 storm. But on the day it hit, more than 85% or 2 million of CenterPoint's Houston area customers all lost power. 4 days later, 1 million were still without power. Some homes and businesses did not get their power back for 10 days.
What would have happened if it had been a Cat 3 or a Cat 4?
We all remember how worthless CenterPoint's online outage tracker was. Wells told state lawmakers that most of the outages were caused by trees falling on power lines. Trees CenterPoint was responsible for keeping clear of power lines. Remember that Wells was in charge when CenterPoint assured us last June that they were all prepared for hurricane season. Now CenterPoint admits there were at least 40 different ways they weren't prepared. Wells brought a fancy chart to that Senate meeting this summer after the hurricane to boast about $2 billion in new investment CenterPoint was making.
That historical investment in the Houston electric system was relatively flat for about 2 decades. You can see the dramatic increase.
But Houston State Senator Paul Betancourt was ready. Turned out nearly half of that new spending was $800 million, a scandalous investment made 3 years ago for huge mobile generators. The generators have generated no electricity for any CenterPoint customer since. But the generators have generated wealth for CenterPoint investors, a $250 million profit, and a windfall for the startup company that leased the generators.
All the evidence pointed to a bad contract or a fraudulent contract.
It's why Senator Betancourt wants customers to get the money back.
The chairman of the PUC has already said that they're looking at every legal way they can to figure out how to get the $800 million returned.
Will customers get a refund?
I didn't think so.
Storm Uri for Life Cycle was like our unicorn moment.
After Winter Storm Uri in 2020, State Senator Phil King wrote a bill that became law, allowing utilities to rent mobile generators for use during power outages, a way to get hospitals and the like up and running quickly in an emergency. Made sense.
I feel like I've been taken advantage of, to be honest.
But it took a hurricane to find out the generators that CenterPoint chose to lease had never been used since.
None of those 15 units, those 32 megawatts, have been deployed since they've been leased since 2021. True or false?
That's true. They have not been deployed.
Okay.
The origins of the contract between CenterPoint and Life Cycle appear to be little more than a sweetheart deal.
Life Cycle won the entire contract.
I think it had a lot to do with the fact that Life Cycle is based out of Houston.
Or it could have to do with what's been described as an inappropriate relationship that happened between Life Cycle's Noel Coombs and David Lassar, at the time the CEO of CenterPoint. Coombs used to run the corporate gym at Halliburton, where Lassar was CEO at the time. She became a salesperson for Life Cycle Power in September of 2020, and in 2021 increased Life Cycle's annual revenue from less than $1 million to more than $7 million.
There's more to this story that I hope comes out sooner rather than later.
When CenterPoint filed with the PUC to pass on the cost of those generators to you, the State Office of Administrative Hearings rejected the idea flat out. The court determined the cost was way overpriced, with another bidder coming in 44% cheaper. CenterPoint had requested those bids for short-term leases on August 3rd, 2021, with a response due date in less than 3 days. That's ridiculous.
It's clear that the bid terms were altered to favor, in my opinion, this one bidder.
That's what Charles Griffey thinks too, a former senior vice president of Reliant Energy, who is now an industry consultant.
My opinion hasn't changed. It was a bad deal. very questionable deal.
Griffey testified about the Life Cycle CEO being a convicted felon, still on probation. And he saw with his own eyes the connection between Lessar and Coombs.
She had pictures posted on her Facebook page, which got taken down after I found them.
What do you remember from the pictures?
It was a picture of the two of them out in front of a hotel in Denver.
CenterPoint customers are paying $2.39 every single month for those pretty useless generators. Most of the emails between Lifecycle and CenterPoint are hidden from the public, sealed by the state. But the emails published by the Houston Chronicle revealed Jason Wells had his hands in that Lifecycle contract, working with the company even before the bid request had been made public. This email was sent at noon on August 3rd. Wells was already rushing Lifecycle to prepare for a bigger deal. Let's get past this short-term process and then immediately turn our attention to the longer-term structure. Here's the problem. The bid request, it wasn't published until 5 hours later. Testimony in that legal fight over this contract kind of shows us why CenterPoint might have been in a hurry. They wanted to brag about large long-term expenditure plans at their Analyst Day meeting in the fall of 21. Our chat with Mr. Lessar lasted about as long as it takes to turn on a light bulb.
I'm good. Hang on, I got another call coming in.
Lessar may have made that final decision on the Life Cycle contract because he was the boss. But that $800 million deal with your money? Mr. Wells agreed with him.
The decisions that were made, it was profits over people.
I'm absolutely shocked that the PUC allowed that and actually overruled the Administrative Law Court on that decision.
Two current PUC commissioners, Kathleen Jackson and Lori Kobos, cast votes that allowed CenterPoint to pass the $800 million smelly deal onto you. Now, Kobos might be having regrets, especially after learning the contract can't be terminated.
There's tremendous concern about the mobile generation units, this 15 units that cost a lot of money and were not used, and the ratepayers are paying for it.
But Wells still defends the $800 million boondoggle.
Would you today say that that is a reasonable cost to assign to the ratepayers, to the consumers?
I do.
Now CenterPoint wants the Public Utility Commission to approve a $5 billion infrastructure improvement plan. Customers who are already overcharged for the transmission lines that carry the electricity would foot the bill.
They cannot continue to be the pack mule, for bad judgment.
Bad judgment. It hangs over Jason Wells' future.
Why is he still working for you?
CenterPoint has so far ignored the calls to get rid of Jason Wells. In fact, we've learned the utility is hiring more top executives from California's PG&E. In May 23, Christopher Foster was brought in as the chief financial officer. Just a month ago, Keith Stevens. He was brought in as chief communications officer. If that guy doesn't know how to handle bad press, who does? But it's not just those PG&E hires that should raise red flags. We should all make sure that PG&E's negligent safety practices aren't imported here too, because we've got our own problems. CenterPoint's failure to properly maintain light poles likely cost lives.
We did have 3,000 poles break.
Osmos Utility Services is a major contractor all over the country, but it was also one of the utility pole maintenance contractors for PG&E.
Their name keeps coming up. They were the same group in the fire, correct?
Jason Wells, yes, sir.
Firefighters continue to battle the largest wildfire in Texas history. This morning, the fire only 5% contained.
The Smokehouse Creek fire raged for 3 weeks, killing 2, burning more than 1 million acres. Local station 39 overlaid the footprint of the fire onto the Houston area to help show us the magnitude of the blaze. You know who's a defendant in multiple lawsuits stemming from the Smokehouse Creek fire? Osmos is.
We've got to have top-down guidelines on how utilities are measured. It was just mind-bogglingly stupid to have a public utility say they're measuring against themselves.
As a Texan born and raised on the coast, I am weary, I'm tired, I'm disappointed, and I'm disgusted. The stories that I heard sound like they come from a third world country. And yet, Houston is the energy capital of the world, but CenterPoint didn't have the foresight to protect that energy, to protect their customers, and ultimately protect our lives.
All loss of life is terribly tragic. My heart goes out.
The Bible says the road to hell is broad and crowded. Please deny CenterPoint the rate increase and make them repay the $800 million they stole. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story.